The sky over Nova Europa burned red. Nobody on the colony world ever thought the war would reach them. They had fields of blue wheat that rolled under the soft suns, cities full of laughing children, towers that glittered like silver glass. Peace was the only thing they ever knew. But peace is a fragile thing when you're human in a galaxy that never forgets old grudges. The enemy came in sleek, black ships, not bothering to even hail or warn. The first bombs cracked the earth open, tearing apart schools, marketplaces, and every place people thought they were safe. Within an hour, half the cities on Nova Europa were smoke and rubble. General Mara Voss watched it unfold from a bunker deep under New Paris. She clenched her fists so hard her nails drew blood. On the holoscreen above her, feeds from other colonies flickered in, Sigma Prime, Halcyon Reach, even Enoch's Cradle, all burning, all under attack. Humanity's outer worlds were falling one by one, and the enemy didn't even have the decency to make demands. They wanted extermination. Behind her, someone muttered, "Where the hell are the giants?" Mara turned slowly. Lieutenant Brandt, young, fresh out of academy, not yet used to real war. His voice was small, like a child asking where his parents were during a storm. She didn't answer right away. Part of her wanted to tell him the truth. The giants were gone. Lost to history. Stories parents told their kids to make them proud of their ancestors. Huge humans, bred for strength, endurance, rage, so big that a normal soldier barely came up to their waist. They were built when Earth first realized it wasn't the top of the food chain anymore. But Mara wasn't in the mood for fairy tales or comforting lies. "They're coming," she said. "They always come when it's bad enough." Brandt swallowed, not fully believing. But he nodded, hope flickering in his tired eyes. The floor shook as another bomb hit somewhere close. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the lights flickered. Mara grabbed her rifle from the wall and motioned to the others. "Move," she barked. "We hold Sector 9 until evac shuttles get the civilians out. I don't care if it's the end of the world. You hold the goddamn line." Soldiers scrambled, loading weapons, checking armor, slamming magazines into rifles with shaking hands. They all looked like ghosts, pale and hollow-eyed under the harsh lights. Mara strapped on her helmet, hiding her fear under layers of steel and discipline. They filed out into the streets, into the hell Nova Europa had become. It was worse out here. Bodies littered the ground. Smoke clogged the air so thick you could barely see the burnt-out shells of what had once been houses, schools, lives. The sky, once a gentle violet, was now black and roiling with ash. Mara pushed forward through the rubble, shouting orders, firing at any movement that wasn't human. Drones zipped past them, scanning, firing stun pulses, trying to pin down survivors. Alien soldiers in chitinous armor moved like insects, cold and precise. Brandt was hit first. A burst of energy slammed into his chest, knocking him off his feet. He gasped, trying to rise, blood leaking from his mouth. Mara dragged him behind cover, cursing. He wasn't dead, yet. But the way he blinked up at her, confused and scared, she knew he wouldn't make it without a medic. "Giants," he whispered again, before passing out. Mara's throat tightened. For a second, she wanted to scream, to howl at the sky for help, for backup, for anything. And then the ground really started to shake. Not from bombs, from footsteps. Heavy, thunderous, earth-cracking footsteps. Mara froze. So did everyone else. The enemy, the drones, even the damn smoke seemed to hesitate. From the dust and ruin beyond the cratered buildings, massive figures began to appear. Human figures, but not like any normal humans. Towering at nearly 20 feet tall, their armor gleamed dark and dented from 1,000 battles. Massive rifles were slung casually over their shoulders like toys. Their faces were scarred, brutal, determined. The giants had come. One of them, a woman with a shaved head and a long plasma scar running down her arm, stomped into view. She carried a hammer as tall as a man, crackling with raw energy. Her voice boomed over the battlefield, loud and furious. "You hit our worlds!" she roared. "Now you face our wrath!" And with a deafening roar, the giants charged. Mara barely had time to process what was happening before the battlefield exploded into chaos. The giants hit the enemy lines like a tidal wave of metal and fury. The alien soldiers who had moved so carefully, so methodically before, now scattered like ants under a boot. The giant woman with the hammer swung it once, and the blast knocked a dozen of the chitin-armored invaders into the air like rag dolls. Another giant, a massive man with shoulders wide as tanks, ripped a drone out of the sky with one hand and crushed it into sparking debris. Mara stared, stunned. She had heard the old stories. Who hadn't? Stories of the Titan Project, when Earth's last hope against a conquering alien empire had been to create warriors too big, too strong, and too stubborn to be stopped. But she had always thought it was ancient history, old propaganda videos to make people feel proud. She had never dreamed they were real. "Move!" someone shouted into her comm, dragging her back to reality. Mara shook herself and grabbed Brant under the arms, hauling him toward the fallback point. Around her, soldiers rallied. You could feel the fear draining from them, replaced by something else. Something wild, fierce. Hope. Gunfire rattled and flashed all around them. The enemy was trying to regroup, but the giants tore through their formations like they were nothing. One of them scooped up a broken armored vehicle and hurled it across a whole street, smashing a command unit that had been barking orders from the rear. Mara ducked behind the shattered remains of a fountain, laying Brant down carefully. He was unconscious now, but breathing. Good enough for now. She turned back to the fight, heart pounding. The giant woman, people were already starting to call her Hammer over the comms, strode right into the teeth of the enemy advance. Plasma blasts hit her armor and barely scorched it. A squad of alien commandos charged at her, thinking they could bring her down with sheer numbers. They didn't last 3 seconds. The hammer came down once, twice, 3 times, and each strike sent shockwaves that cracked pavement and sent bodies flying. "Holy shit," Mara muttered. "Get the civilians out." Hammer roared over the battlefield, somehow hearing and speaking into every soldier's comlink at once. "We'll cover you." Mara didn't need to be told twice. She barked orders, and her squad snapped into motion, moving wounded and civilians toward the last shuttle pad. As she ran, she kept stealing glances back at the giants. They weren't just fighting. They were enjoying it, smashing, laughing, roaring battle cries that shook the very air. It was like they had been waiting years for a fight like this, like they lived for it. And for the first time since the bombing started, Mara felt something burn inside her chest. Not fear, not grief, pride. Earth wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. The evacuation site was chaos. Shuttles were lifting off as fast as they could load, smoke clogging the air, civilians screaming and crying. Mara and her team shoved through the crowd, waving their rifles, clearing paths. "Get them out!" she yelled. "Go, go!" A mother clutching 2 small children stumbled toward her, sobbing. Mara grabbed the kids, helping shove them into the open door of a shuttle. The pilot, a kid who barely looked old enough to drive, was pale but steady as he helped them in. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing shriek ripped through the noise. Mara spun just in time to see a new kind of enemy dropping from the sky. Black-armored, sleeker, faster, elite units. The real killers. "Incoming!" she shouted, diving behind the shuttle for cover. The elites landed hard, plasma rifles already firing. One shuttle went up in a ball of fire immediately. Screams filled the air. Soldiers scrambled to return fire, but the elites moved with terrifying precision, weaving through the chaos like ghosts. Mara squeezed the trigger until her rifle overheated, but it wasn't enough. There were too many. Too fast. And then another giant landed. Not walked. Landed. A shadow fell over Mara, and she looked up to see him falling like a meteor, crashing into the ground with a thunderous boom that split the earth. He rose up, towering over the battlefield, eyes glowing behind his battered helmet. This one was different from the others. Older, meaner. His armor was a patchwork of old battles, scars of wars fought and survived. His voice, when it came, was like thunder rolling over a mountain. "You think you can wipe us out?" he growled. "You think you can bomb our children and walk away?" He pulled a massive twin-barrel gun from his back, aiming it at the elites. "Now," he snarled, "you deal with me." And he pulled the trigger. The gun's roar was deafening. It didn't fire bullets. It fired destruction. Twin blasts of energy ripped through the air, punching holes through the elite soldiers like they were made of paper. Whole clusters of them simply ceased to exist, vaporized where they stood. Mara ducked her head instinctively, feeling the heat of the blasts even from behind cover. Dust and debris blasted outward, knocking civilians off their feet. But the giant didn't let up. He moved forward step by step, each stride a declaration of war, mowing down the enemy with terrifying precision. The elites tried to regroup, scattering, trying to flank him. A few even got behind him, unloading plasma rifles into his back. But his armor, thick, ugly, scarred, barely flinched. He twisted around, grabbed one elite in his huge fist, and crushed him like a tin can. The others bolted, retreating toward the smoking remains of their dropships. Mara didn't waste the moment. "Move!" she screamed, waving the last groups of civilians toward the loading bays. "Get them off this rock!" Soldiers ran with them, pushing wounded comrades onto the ramps, dragging unconscious kids by the arms if they had to. There was no time to be gentle anymore. In the chaos, the giant glanced down at her, just for a second. Mara felt the weight of that look. It wasn't pity. It wasn't even concern. It was a silent acknowledgement, a nod between warriors. She nodded back. Another explosion rocked the spaceport. One of the enemy warships was descending, trying to cut off the evacuation. Its guns spun up, targeting the shuttles. Mara's heart froze. Not now. Not after everything. The ship's cannons started to glow, but then the ground itself screamed. A second giant, this one even bigger, wearing armor covered in crude, hand-painted kill marks, leaped onto the ship like a goddamn beast. He landed on top of it with a deafening crash, his boots punching through the hull. The ship tilted dangerously, engines sputtering. The giant didn't even hesitate. He ripped open a panel on the ship's back, grabbed a massive fuel line, and ripped it free. The ship tried to climb higher to shake him off, but it was already too late. Flames shot from its belly. It spun wildly, belching fire, then slammed into a hillside outside the city with a fireball that lit up the whole sky. The giants didn't just fight. They didn't just survive. They dominated. Mara almost forgot to breathe. She had seen heroes before, tough soldiers, brave captains, good men and women giving everything they had. But this was something else. The titans of old weren't myths. They were flesh and blood, and they were pissed. Her comm crackled. "Shuttle Wave 3, clear!" someone shouted. "Evac 90% complete!" Another voice chimed in. Mara slammed her fist against the hull of a nearby shuttle, pure adrenaline flooding her system. "All soldiers fall back to the evacuation point," she barked. "We're getting out of here." The giants kept fighting as they pulled back, covering the retreat. The woman with the hammer, everyone was calling her now like it was her damn birth name, planted herself between the enemy forces and the shuttle pad, swinging her hammer in brutal, perfect arcs. Sparks and blood sprayed every time it connected. The giant with the twin-barrel gun, some were calling him Grim now, stood just ahead of her, firing in short, controlled bursts, cutting down anything that tried to flank. As Mara sprinted up the last shuttle ramp, she looked back one last time. And what she saw was burned into her memory forever. The giants weren't just defending. They were sending a message to the galaxy, to anyone who thought humanity was weak because they loved peace, because they farmed, because they built schools and raised laughing children. The message was simple. If you come for humanity's children, humanity will send its monsters after you. The shuttle lifted off with a roar, the colony shrinking below them into a burning, broken landscape. Mara slumped into a seat, heart hammering, sweat soaking her armor. She looked out the window one last time. Down below, through the smoke and flame, she could still see them. The giants, holding the line, standing tall, unbreakable. Brant stirred beside her, groggy and pale. "Giants," he croaked. Mara smiled grimly. "Yeah," she whispered. "Giants." And for the first time since the bombs fell, she believed they might actually win. The shuttle rattled and groaned as it climbed through the atmosphere, a mess of wounded civilians and shell-shocked soldiers packed into every available seat. Smoke from Nova Europa still clung to the ship's underside, like a second skin. Mara sat near the hatch, clutching her rifle even though she didn't expect to use it anymore. Old habits died hard. Brant was strapped in next to her, pale but stable now, an IV drip hooked to his arm. His fingers twitched restlessly, like he was still dreaming about the battle. Across the cabin, murmurs started to rise, people whispering, dazed, trying to make sense of what they'd seen. "They were real," someone kept saying over and over. "I saw one rip a tank in half with his bare hands." "They saved us." Mara tuned it out. Her mind was stuck on what she had witnessed. Those giants, those monsters, weren't just soldiers. They were something else. Something humanity had hidden away, maybe even from itself. The shuttle's pilot's voice crackled through the overhead speakers. "Attention passengers, we're making a jump to Earth orbit base. Expected arrival in 30 minutes. Hold tight." Earth, home. But Mara didn't feel relief. Not really. Because if the war had reached the colonies, Earth wouldn't be far behind. She leaned her head back against the cold steel wall, closing her eyes. She needed answers. And somehow she knew exactly where to start. By the time they docked at Earth orbit base, the wounded were being rushed out by teams of frantic medics. Mara shoved her way through the crowd, ignoring the protests, waving her rank like a weapon. She needed to get to command. Now inside the towering station, it was chaos. Holographic battle maps showing entire sectors under siege, officers barking orders, civilians packed into holding bays like cattle. And at the center of it all, under the flickering lights of the war room, stood General Marcus Hale. Hale was a legend. Older than the stars, it seemed, with a silver beard and a back straighter than a steel girder. His eyes, one real, one cybernetic, snapped to Mara the second she entered. "You saw them," he said, no preamble. Mara nodded, still catching her breath. "The giants," she said. "They're real." Hale's mouth twitched in something that might have been a smile, or maybe just a grimace. "They were never a myth," he said quietly. "We just made people forget." Mara frowned. "Why?" Hale turned to the battle maps, gesturing for her to follow. "Because the Titans project wasn't something humanity was proud of," he said. "It was desperation, pure and simple. When Earth first made contact with the galactic civilizations 2 centuries ago, We realized real quick we weren't the apex predators anymore. We needed weapons they wouldn't expect. Not machines, not bombs, humans. He tapped a display, and ancient, grainy footage lit up the air. Giants in crude armor, stomping through alien battlefields, smashing enemies like insects. Enhanced growth, Hale explained. Muscle density beyond anything natural, reflexes, regeneration. They were designed for war, and only war. Mara swallowed hard. And when the wars ended? She asked. We buried them, Hale said, voice rough. Locked them away. Some went into deep cryo-sleep. Some just disappeared into the wilderness. We promised ourselves humanity would never need monsters again. He turned to face her fully now, his real eye hard, the cybernetic one glowing faintly. But monsters are exactly what we need now. Mara's stomach twisted. She thought about Hammer, Grimm, the others. They weren't just weapons. They were people, broken, angry, abandoned. And they're just fighting for us, she asked, almost not believing it. For now, Hale said. But make no mistake, they remember what we did to them. When this war ends, if it ends, we'll have a new fight on our hands. Mara looked at the battle maps again. Whole systems gone dark. Colony worlds smoking. Earth itself probably only weeks, maybe days, from invasion. We cross that bridge later, she said, jaw tightening. Right now, we survive. Hale nodded once, approving. You're assigned to Titan Liaison Command, he said. You leave in 1 hour. Pack light. You'll be fighting side by side with them. Mara blinked. What? You fought alongside them already, Hale said. They trust you. They need a human face. Someone who remembers they're not just machines built to kill. He handed her a datapad. Coordinates. A mission briefing. A grim little message flashing at the bottom. Earth Offensive, Phase 1. Mara exhaled slowly. The giants had stepped onto the battlefield. Now humanity was about to unleash them properly. Not just to defend, but to strike back. And this time, they wouldn't be fighting alone. Mara didn't even bother stopping at her assigned quarters. She grabbed a fresh rifle, loaded up a sidearm, slung a med kit over her shoulder, and made her way straight to the shuttle bays. The coordinates General Hale had given her led to Hangar 17, deep beneath the main station. Off the maps, off the books. She had to pass 2 checkpoints, each guarded by soldiers who looked like they were ready to shoot first and asked questions never. By the time she reached the final door, her palms were sweating. A sensor scanned her face, her ID. The door slid open with a hiss. The room beyond wasn't a normal hangar. No sleek ships, no gleaming equipment, just a massive, darkened space with shadows moving like giants in a child's nightmare. And there they were. The giants. Mara felt her throat tighten as she stepped in. Up close, they were even more terrifying. Their armor wasn't polished or standardized like a normal army's. It was a patchwork of old battle gear, scavenged tech, and personal trophies. Skulls, markings, scratches from battles so old nobody even remembered their names. Hammer stood near the center, her enormous hammer resting casually against her shoulder. She was laughing, deep and rich, at something another giant said. A mountain of a man with burn scars climbing up one side of his face. Grimm was there too, silent, sitting on a cargo crate reinforced just for his weight. He was cleaning the massive twin-barreled gun with steady, methodical movements. His armor was even more battered than Mara remembered. Fresh scorch marks, cracks spiderwebbing across one thigh plate. And standing apart from the rest, watching everything with cold, sharp eyes, was the oldest giant, the one who had landed like a meteor at the shuttle pad. They all turned when Mara stepped closer. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Hammer grinned. Well, well, she said, voice rumbling through the air. If it isn't the little soldier who stood her ground. Mara forced herself to stand straight, keeping her fear locked deep inside. General Hale sent me, she said. Said you might need a liaison, someone to help coordinate. The scarred man, whom Mara would later learn they called Rook, snorted loudly. Coordinate, he said, like it was the funniest word he'd ever heard. Hammer just kept grinning, swinging her hammer down to rest against the floor with a loud clang. You fought, she said. You bled. You didn't run. That's enough for me. Grim looked up from his weapon, studied Mara with those cold, unreadable eyes. Then he gave a single, slow nod. The oldest giant stepped forward now, towering over Mara like a mountain come alive. His armor creaked with old weight. His voice, when he spoke, was a low growl. Name's Warden, he said. I lead this pack. You stay sharp, you stay honest, and you might live through what's coming. Mara nodded stiffly. What is coming? She asked. Warden glanced back at the others, then turned his gaze to the far wall, where a battered hologram flickered into life. It showed the enemy fleet, hundreds of ships, thousands of ground troops, and one massive command vessel at the center, a ship so big it blotted out the stars behind it. The enemy's making a push for Earth, Warden said. But they won't hit it straight. They'll strike the lunar shield array first. Take that down, and Earth's defenses will crumble like paper. Mara stared at the map, heart pounding. If we lose the moon, she whispered. We lose everything, Warden finished grimly. Hammer stepped forward, slamming her hammer's head into the deck for emphasis. That's why we're not going to let 'em, she said, fire in her eyes. Mara looked at them, this motley crew of half-forgotten titans, and felt a strange, fierce hope burning in her chest. They were rough, brutal, half-wild, but they were humanity's best chance. Warden turned back to her. We're moving in 2 hours, he said. No backup, no cavalry, just us. And me, Mara said firmly. Warden's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile or a warning. Yeah, he rumbled. You too, little soldier. The giants moved into action, prepping their brutal gear, checking their oversized weapons. Mara found herself swept up in their orbit, half terrified, half thrilled. She wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was part of something bigger, something ancient and furious, something humanity had buried because it was too dangerous to live with. And now they were setting it loose on the galaxy. 2 hours later, Mara found herself crammed inside a drop shuttle that felt more like a missile with seats. The giants barely fit. Hammer was hunched over, her huge hands gripping the restraints like she might rip them clean out of the wall. Rook sat cross-legged, his massive rifle resting across his knees. Grim stood, because no way was he folding himself into one of the seats, silently bracing against the hull. And Warden just stared straight ahead, helmet in his lap, his old eyes burning like coals. The shuttle rattled as it cut through the blackness of space. Ahead, the lunar shield array hung over the silver surface of the moon, 12 colossal towers linked by glowing energy lines. Right now, those shields kept Earth safe from orbital bombardment. But already Mara could see enemy ships swarming around the array, hammering the defenses with endless barrages. Fighters zipped back and forth like angry hornets. Explosions flared every few seconds. A voice crackled over the comms. All units, this is command. Array breach in progress. Enemy forces penetrating outer defense lines. Immediate reinforcement requested. Repeat, immediate reinforcement requested. Mara tightened the straps of her harness and checked her rifle one last time. She wasn't going to sit this one out, even if she felt tiny compared to the monsters riding with her. The pilot's voice came over the cabin speakers. Brace for combat drop in 30 seconds. The giants barely reacted. They just shifted slightly, like bears waking from a nap. Mara tried to slow her breathing, tried to quiet the voice in her head screaming, "You're about to die, you're about to die," but it didn't work. Instead, she focused on Warden. If he wasn't worried, neither was she. The light above the hatch turned red, then yellow, then green. The doors blew open with a scream of decompression, and the giants jumped. No fancy landers, no support teams, just them, hurtling through vacuum straight at the lunar array like falling gods. Mara unbuckled herself and sprinted after them, heart hammering. She'd been issued a mag-grav pack, ugly, heavy tech strapped to her back, that let her steer her fall. Barely. She tumbled through the void, Earth rising huge and blue behind her, gunfire lighting up the moon's surface below. She could see the battlefield now, enemy infantry swarming across the array's control towers, defense turrets firing blindly into the night, human soldiers pinned down, outnumbered, outgunned. It was a massacre, until the giants hit the ground. Warden slammed down like a meteor, landing on a squad of enemy soldiers and sending bodies flying. Hammer crashed through the roof of one of the shield generators, roaring like a beast, her weapon swinging in brutal arcs. Grim touched down near a group of pinned human defenders and opened up with his massive twin gun, mowing down the enemy like wheat before a thresher. Rook landed last, rolling to absorb the impact, coming up with a grin on his scarred face and a plasma cannon bigger than Mara strapped to his back. And Mara hit hard, the grav pack nearly snapping her spine, but she rolled, came up firing, teeth bared in a snarl. The battlefield was chaos. Enemy forces turned in panic, screaming orders in their clicking insectile language. Plasma bolts flashed everywhere, explosions ripped the air apart, but the giants moved like avatars of destruction. Hammer charged into a tower's base, smashing supports with her weapon, bringing the whole structure down onto a squad of invaders. Grim knelt beside a human platoon, providing brutal cover fire as they scrambled for safer ground. Warden, slow and steady, waded through the enemy like a reaper through a cornfield, every punch sending bodies flying, every step shaking the lunar soil. Mara fought too. Smaller, faster, darting between wreckage, taking out enemy officers, calling positions to the giants over the comms. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was part of the damn fight. Above them, one of the array's main towers shuddered under a fresh wave of enemy bombardment. Its energy shield flickered dangerously. Mara's comm crackled. "This is Shield Command. Critical damage. Repeat, critical damage. If that tower falls, the array's going offline." Warden growled low over the team channel. "On it." He pointed to Mara. "With me. Now." Without thinking, she ran after him, heart in her throat. They charged up the broken slope of the tower's outer defenses, enemy fire hammering around them. Grim and Rook covered them, raining destruction from behind. Hammer broke off, charging toward an enemy artillery position that was chewing up the remaining defenses. Mara skidded behind Warden, following his massive frame as he smashed through the tower's front gates with his bare hands. Inside, it was worse. Enemy troops crawling over the control nodes like termites, tearing apart the shield systems. Warden didn't hesitate. He roared, a sound so deep it made Mara's bones vibrate, and tore into them. Mara backed him up, shooting anything that moved, dropping grenades into clusters of enemy engineers, holding the stairwells. Her rifle overheated twice, but she kept moving, kept fighting. They fought their way to the tower's core. And there, standing over the shield generator, was something different. A tall alien commander, wrapped in black armor, holding a weapon Mara had never seen before, a twisted, jagged staff pulsing with dark energy. The alien turned, eyes glowing with hate. Warden let out a low snarl. "You!" he growled. "You're the one behind this? The alien commander smiled, a horrible, knowing smile, and raised the staff. The real fight was just beginning. The alien commander moved first, faster than anything that size should have been able to. The dark staff slashed through the air, sending a shockwave of energy screaming toward them. Warden shoved Mara aside without hesitation, planting himself directly in the path of the attack. The blast hit him square in the chest, knocking him back a step, but only a step. He straightened slowly, steam rising from his battered armor. And he smiled. It was the kind of smile that promised someone was about to die. Mara scrambled to her feet, heart pounding so hard she could barely think. Her rifle was fried from overuse, useless now, but she drew her sidearm, hands steady through sheer force of will. She knew she couldn't take that alien in a straight fight, but she wasn't going to stand there doing nothing. Warden rolled his massive shoulders, letting out a low, rumbling growl that filled the ruined tower chamber. The alien hissed something in its harsh tongue, the staff flaring with pulsing black light. Then Warden charged. It was like watching a mountain come alive. He hit the alien with a shoulder smash that cracked the floor beneath their feet. The staff clanged to the side as Warden grabbed the commander and hurled him through a reinforced console like it was cardboard. Mara moved, firing shot after shot into enemy troops still clustered around the generator. They were trying to overload it, trying to bring the whole shield down manually now that their leader was busy. "Cover the core," Warden barked over the comms, not looking away from the commander struggling to rise. Mara threw herself into it, diving behind the generator, using every dirty trick she knew, kicking out knees, firing point blank, smashing skulls with the butt of her pistol. Warden and the commander clashed again, brutal and ugly. The alien staff lashed out, scoring deep gouges in Warden's armor, but Warden answered with his fists, massive, unstoppable. He fought like he didn't care about pain anymore, like he had made peace with it a long time ago. The whole tower shook with the force of their battle. Outside, Mara could hear Hammer over the comms, shouting in triumph as she destroyed the artillery positions. Grimm's voice was calm and cold, reporting kill counts as he laid down suppressive fire. Rook's laughter echoed like a wild thing. They were winning. They just had to survive a little longer. The alien commander twisted, pulling something small and sharp from its belt. A grenade, shaped like a jagged crystal. It flashed blood red in its hand. Mara's heart stopped. He's going to blow the core. Without thinking, she sprinted forward past burning wreckage and pools of blood, shouting at the top of her lungs. "Warden, grenade!" Warden didn't hesitate. In one brutal motion, he grabbed the alien by the throat, lifted him clean off the ground, and threw him straight up into the air. The alien detonated mid-flight, a brilliant crimson flare lighting the shattered tower. Shards of black armor rained down like ash. But the blast rocked the whole structure. Cracks spiderwebbed across the shield generator. Systems screamed alarms in a dozen languages. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but it had wounded it badly. Mara skidded to the generator, heart racing, slamming into the control panels, trying to override the meltdown sequence. Come on," she muttered, fingers flying across the keys. Warden stomped over, his armor smoking, blood dripping from a dozen shallow cuts. "Can you stop it?" he growled. Mara shook her head grimly. "Not for long. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe less." Warden didn't even blink. "That's enough," he said. He turned back toward the shattered doorway, where the remaining enemy forces were regrouping outside. Reinforcements, no doubt, called by the explosion. He looked at Mara. "You stay with the core. You keep it alive." His voice was pure iron. "We'll hold them." Mara wanted to argue, wanted to say it was suicide, but the look in Warden's eyes, the sheer, immovable will, silenced her. She nodded once. "I'll hold," she said. Warden gave a sharp, satisfied nod. Then he keyed the team communication. "All Titans, rally on me, last stand." Hammer's voice cracked over the channel, fierce and exultant. "Hell yes!" Grimm's cold, flat. "Affirmative." Rook's wild cackle. "Time to break some bones." Mara turned back to the console, fingers flying again, trying to patch the worst of the damage. Behind her she heard the giants moving into position. Heavy steps, weapons priming, low mutters of promises made and blood debts owed. And when the enemy stormed the tower again, they found not a broken, desperate handful of survivors. They found the monsters of Earth's past, standing tall, defiant, unbreakable, ready to buy humanity's future with blood if they had to. The first wave of enemies hit like a hammer. Mara barely looked up from the generator console. She had her orders, and she would follow them. But the sounds around her were impossible to ignore. The ground shook with every step Warden took. Plasma fire crackled, explosions thudded against the reinforced walls, and the Titans roared back with brutal, bone-shaking violence. Hammer led the charge, her weapon spinning in savage arcs, every blow flattening squads of enemy soldiers like they were nothing. Grimm fired in short, deafening bursts, cutting through armor and flesh with ruthless efficiency. Rook barreled through the enemy ranks, laughing like a lunatic, swinging a massive blade torn straight from a wrecked alien walker. And Warden fought like death itself. Mara risked a glance back, and what she saw would stay with her forever. The enemy had numbers, speed, technology, but the giants had rage, will, purpose. They were humanity's answer to a galaxy that thought it could burn them out of existence, and they weren't losing. Yet. The generator behind Mara gave a warning shriek. Systems failing, heat building. She swore under her breath, fingers flying faster, patching, rerouting, praying. 2 minutes, she shouted into the comms. Warden caught her eye across the chaos. He nodded once, calm, certain. He wasn't planning to survive this. None of them were. The enemy changed tactics. New elites poured in, sleek, black-armored assassins, moving like liquid death. They cut down 2 human defenders before Mara even registered their arrival. Hammer saw them first. "Stay on the core!" she bellowed at Mara. Then she charged. One by one, the giants intercepted the elites. Grimm took 3 shots to the chest and still kept coming. Rook lost an arm at the elbow to a plasma blade, but roared with laughter and beat his attacker to death with the stump. And Hammer fought like the earth itself was angry through her. But it wasn't enough. The elites moved faster, tighter. They didn't fight to win the battle. They fought to reach the generator, to finish what their dead commander had started. Mara fired every shot she had, emptying her sidearm, grabbing a fallen rifle, burning her hands as she kept firing. But more and more of them slipped past. Too many. Too fast. Warden saw it, too, and he made a decision. He turned away from the fight, sprinting toward Mara, scooping her up under one massive arm like she weighed nothing. "What are you?" she gasped, struggling. He didn't answer. He ran, straight to the generator core. With his free hand, he punched through the control panel, into the pulsing, wounded heart of the shield system. Sparks showered down around them. "Warden, no!" Mara screamed, finally understanding. He looked down at her, and for the first time, she saw something gentler in his eyes. Regret, pride, maybe even hope. "Monsters built to fight," he said, voice a low rumble. "But still human, always human." Then he shoved her away, hard, sending her sprawling toward the far wall. Before she could scramble back up, Warden stepped into the generator's core. The system reacted instantly, feeding on his bioelectric field, his enhanced body, his sheer, impossible will. The shields flared back to full strength in a sudden, blinding wave, burning through enemy troops like a cleansing fire. The explosion that followed wasn't a blast, it was a birth. Light erupted from the tower, a pillar of raw energy that tore through the enemy fleet orbiting the moon, frying circuits, blinding sensors, shattering ships like glass. Every soldier on the battlefield stopped and stared, human, alien, giant alike, frozen by the sheer impossible sight. Earth's shield was alive again, stronger than ever, and Warden was gone. Mara lay there, stunned, as the last enemy troops broke and fled, scattering like insects before a flood. The giants stood in the wreckage, battered, bleeding, alive. Hammer dropped her hammer to the ground, the weapon landing with a final, exhausted clang. Grim knelt beside the spot where Warden had disappeared, bowing his head. Rook just stared at the sky, silent for the first time Mara had ever seen. Mara rose slowly, heart broken and full at the same time. She limped forward, reaching out a shaking hand to the place where Warden had stood. The heat was fading. The power was still humming. He had saved them. He had saved everyone. A crackle came over the wideband comms. Earth Command to Lunar Defense. Shield confirmed active. Enemy fleet retreating. I repeat, enemy fleet is retreating. Cheers erupted through the human forces. Soldiers wept openly, hugging each other, screaming in disbelief and joy. Mara just stood there, letting the tears stream down her soot-streaked face. For Warden, for all of them. Hammer came to her side, laying a heavy, scarred hand on her shoulder. "He chose it," she said quietly. "His way." Mara nodded. "He was human," she whispered. "The best of us." The giants gathered around her, battered and bloodied, but alive. They weren't myths anymore. They weren't monsters. They were the guardians of Earth. And now the galaxy knew. You can bomb our worlds. You can burn our homes. You can even try to erase our name. But when you push humanity too far, our giants will answer, and they will not be stopped.